Hi everyone, it's Kelly from Kelly's Bead Boutique. So I've been making and teaching how to make jewelry for a very long time now. And one of the things that I hear all the time is, you make it look so easy. Well, that's because I think it is. So I'm going to take some simple parts and some simple techniques, and I'm going to teach you how to make your very own jewelry. So if you want to see what I'm making today, come and join me. So for our piece today, we have 5 meters of our 4-ply Irish wax linen, and I have a button, and then I have a bunch of our little 6mm large hole pearls. So these are a freshwater pearl, and they've got a drill hole that accommodates up to about a 1.5mm cording. Now these are not all perfect. They're all kind of organic. Some of them have little bumps and things like that, but that's exactly what I want on this piece because it's a really organic looking piece. And for tools, we're probably going to use a pair of our tweezers, but if you don't have a pair, don't worry about it. It just makes it a little bit easier if you kind of put a knot where you're not supposed to. And then we need a pair of cutters of some kind, and you guys know I never have scissors, so I'm going to use my cutters. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is cut my cords a little bit. So I'm going to find the center of this. And I'm going to, so I just marry up the two ends, and I already had this kind of centered because it's a lot of cording, and I'm going to give that a little cut. So now we're going to have 2 long pieces of cording like that. All right, so I'm going to marry up those 4 ends, and I'm going to find the center. So now you have to be really careful with this cording because it does have that wax on it. It will catch on itself, so it's really easy to end up with knots and things like that. I know that you can take, a piece of paper and run it over and get a little bit of the wax off of it, but I just never bother with that. All right, so now I'm going to cut the middle of that. So now we're going to have 4 pieces that are about 1.25 meters long. So now what I'm going to do is kind of push those together and run those through the button. So I'm just going to put that through there. Now this is not going to be a kit. We will just have these as singular items on the website. So I'll make sure to put a link below for all of the things that you could need for this. So you don't need many things, but we have so many different choices of the 4-ply Irish wax linen. So that's why I thought, well, I don't want to make a kit because then you guys can just choose whatever you want and whatever kind of buttons you want. And then we have lots of these little pearls, and they're fairly affordable because we've deemed these as a B grade. So they're not like what I would call perfect quality. So, all right, I'm going to marry these ends up. So there's like 8 ends there. And I just kind of run my fingers down, making sure that everything's kind of going where I want. It is really hard for me to do this on camera because it's such a long piece and I want you to see it. But by doing that, I create knots and things like that. So, I do want to get it down here. There we go. It's just, with all that wax on there, it can make it a little difficult. But I'm trying to get that so that it's sort of centered. Okay, so now you've got this piece on one end and you've got like 8 pieces on here. Okay, so now I'm just going to do an overhand knot. And I'm going to bring all of those through and push that towards the button. Now your hands are going to be a mess after. They're going to have wax all over them, but like just a quick wash and it'll come off really easily. So I find the best thing to do is just kind of use your thumbnail and push that down right where you want it. And if you want, you could grab each particular piece, like grab, they are hard to get apart, and give each one a tug if you wanted to make sure that it was all, nicely put together. Now, if you did have one kind of sticking out, you would definitely want to do that. You would want to take each piece and pull it to make sure that you didn't have anything sticking out, but mine look actually pretty good. Okay, so now what I want to do is separate these. Now, there's no right or wrong to this. Again, this is going to be the most organic bracelet I've ever made, I'm sure, in that I'm not following like any sort of pattern. I'm just kind of letting it fly where it will. But I do kind of want to isolate two at a time that kind of look like they're supposed to go together. So I'm just sort of separating these, making sure they're not getting knotted. So now when I did that, it kind of pulled my knot apart. So I'm just kind of making sure my knot's still tight. Okay, so I've got two there, and I've got two here. And then I want to have them sort of side by each. So yeah, that looks pretty good. So if I get them all kind of separated all the way down, it's much easier to show you. So I've got two here, and two there, and two there. So now on, this literally has what I would say 0 pattern, although I am going to follow a little bit of a sort of a guideline. So about here, I'm going to start, and I'm just going to do a little overhand knot. Now that's where these tweezers come in handy. You can kind of like pull that knot through. And that way, if you make a mistake, I'm just going to move all these other ones out of the way. If you make a mistake and you, like let's say I was to tighten that up and then I was left with that, I could use my tweezers to help unpick it. So I'm going to put a knot there, and then I'm going to put a purl on. So you can go through one at a time, or what you could do is take these and kind of twirl them together and make like a little needle and go through. And then I'm going to make another knot. So I'm just going to go around my fingers. And the way that I do this second knot is I'm kind of trying to make it almost like a bead cap in a sense, in that I'm pushing it down so that it hugs the outside of that bead and kind of swirls around it. So I just want to make sure when I'm making my knots that I'm not making them super, super tight. I'm keeping that a little bit looser on there. I don't want to have these knots so tight that you're able to pull the bead over top of it. So keep your knots a little bit on the, it's not really loose, but it's not super tight, if that makes any sense at all. All right, so now I'm going to go down about 1/2 inch, and I'm going to make another knot. And I'm going to pull that through. So again, you can use your tweezers, or whatever you're most comfortable with. And this does not have to be one of those perfect things where you're measuring every 1/2 inch. I just kind of start there and then make my knot and then put on a bead and then make my knot and then try to keep these together when you're making your knots so that you don't end up with anything sticking out where you don't want it to be. And I'm just sort of pushing that towards that hole of my bead, and we're going to have that. So now I'm going to make another knot, and I often will get, slap happy and throw on a bead and then go, oh gosh, I forgot to put on my knot. So make sure you're putting on your knots. So now these don't have to be exactly even, but we do want to have a similar space between them. So again, I'm not using a measurement, but I am trying to eyeball it. And on this particular one, I'm going about 1/2 inch. So I'll just keep doing this all the way down. So I'll show you one more, and then I'll just kind of speed it up and finish off this one row. So if you want to get that closer in, you can take your tweezers and just give it a little push like that, and that'll help lock it in. So about 1/2 inch away, I'm going to pull that through, make my knot, and if it happens to get a little bit shorter, don't worry about it. And then put my bead on, and then make another knot. So just kind of push towards, you can kind of spiral it a little bit, and then push towards. And then again, if you want, you can use your tweezers to kind of tighten it up. All right, so I'm going to continue this down for a few more, and then I'll be right back. All right, so here's my first strand done, and you can see it's not exactly completely even, but I've got about 1/2 inch space in between them. So now I'm going to pick another strand of 2. So I am going to keep this one and kind of get that out of the way because I'm going to use that for something else later. So I'm going to take this next strand of 2. So I've done that first knot here, about 1/2 inch down. So this one I'm going to do right here. I'm going to start this one up close. And again, this does not have to be perfect. It's just kind of what I did, and I liked how it turned out. So you'll sort of see the finished product when I'm getting it all done there. So that one was up close. And then I'm going to put my bead on. So this is lots of knot tying. So if you're not great at knots, you will be by the time that you finish this, because that's all you're going to be doing is tying knots. So, you know, they're not hard to do. They just take a little finesse. And of course I cut my nails all off and it makes it a little harder. It actually is easier if you have nails. So I'm going to go down another 1/2 inch now that I've started this, and I'll show you why. Now if you need to, just grab your tweezers. Now unfortunately the manufacturer of these tweezers is not making them at the moment, and I only have a couple left. And so I'm hoping to be able to get more. I have to find another source for them. We've been selling these for 13 years and now all of a sudden I can't get them, and it's so frustrating. So I apologize for not having many in stock, and I'm sure at the end of this video, once people start buying things, they'll be sold out, but I will do my best to get more in the coming weeks. Okay, so now you'll see, if I compare it to the first strand that I made, sorry, there's lots of stuff here, so it is hard to see, but you can see it sort of goes in between there. So again, I'm gonna just keep going by the 1/2 inch increments, I have to get that word out right. And you'll find that I'm not editing my videos as much. I'm kind of just leaving them as they are. So if I say a word wrong, I'm just going to correct myself instead of editing it and trying to make everything perfect, because I'm not perfect. Holy smokes, I'm so not perfect. And I think it's actually better if you guys see that I don't always say the right words or say them correctly or whatever. And I definitely don't always make my knots perfect. So it's kind of an opportunity to show you that, you know, I'm not perfect. So I'm going to continue those down. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now it depends on your size of your wrist, and that will be something that you'll have to sort of, you know, look at for measurement. And I will show you at the end how to, you know, kind of figure that out. But I'm going to continue this down for my 8 beads, and then I will be back for the next strand. All right, so I just finished up my second strand. So now you can see that kind of runs in between those beads, and they end up just a little bit above. So now on this next strand here, I'm going to try and figure out how to sandwich those. Get this all out of the way so you can see what I'm trying to do here. Keep it on camera and make sure I can show you. Okay, so this one here now, I want to put a knot about there. So I'm going to sort of, you know, try to, it's kind of comparable to here, but I want to have it a little offset. I don't want it exactly across from that. So I'm, you know, and don't worry about it. If it comes out just a little bit different than mine, then that's the way it's supposed to be. I don't know if you've ever looked back at one of my very, very old videos from like 5 years ago where I did the blossom bracelet. It's a very similar sort of style to the blossom bracelet in that it's meant to be where it goes. And with Irish wax linen, it kind of has a mind of its own because of the waxing on it. So don't get all hung up about perfectionism because it will be the joy, or the, what do they call it? It will be like the thief of your joy. And that is such a big thing for me. I really struggle with perfectionism, and this is like the perfect thing for me to do because I can't be so perfect on it. So now I can see that this one is kind of going a bit wonky. See how it's got like one piece out there? So I'm going to try and figure out, oh, it's that one there. So sometimes you can just figure it out by pulling on one. Okay, so now when I put these together, let's see, will that work? You know, and if it doesn't work, then I'm not gonna, yeah, that'll be fine. Okay, so now I'm going to do my 1/2 inch down. So, and you'll see kind of a bit more of what I'm trying to accomplish when I do my next pass. But I do my 1/2 inch and then put on my bead, and I will continue that on for 8 beads, and then I will be back to show you how to finish up the bracelet. All right, so now you can see that I've got my 3 strands of knotted pearls, and I've got 2 strands here that are still just kind of loose. So what I'm going to be doing now is binding this together. And I just kind of thought it looked a little lame, just sort of like that. So I thought, what can I do? So now you can see that there is sort of groupings of 3. There's like a group of 3 there, and a group of 3 here, and a group of 3 there. So that's what we're going to work with. So what I wanted to do is create a little bit more texture in here. So I'm going to be tying a knot around here. So about halfway down, I'm going to do another little knot. And I'm only doing that just for a little bit of texture. It's good. It really doesn't serve a purpose other than to create a little texture along the way. So just create a knot, and it does not matter where it goes. You don't want to have it right next to where we're going to be tying this up, but so it just adds another little bit of texture. So now I'm going to get my little grouping of 3 here. And so I'm going to kind of pull these down to make sure they're where I want them to be. And then I'm going to wrap this around. And this would actually be a really good barrel knot kind of thing, but I didn't want to do barrel knots today. So I just kind of wrap that around, create a loop, and then go down. And then pull that sort of tight. You can see I wrapped it around my finger a bit there just to kind of give it a little bit of guidance. So this is where the tweezers will come in handy. And I'm just going to push against that a little bit. Get it right where I want it before I tighten it up. And then you can take your tweezers or your thumbnail and then just kind of tighten that up. Okay, so now I'm going to make another little knot. About, it's about a halfway down from where you're going to be making your next knot. So, and it's just, again, just for a little bit of texture. And we don't want loose pieces of Irish wax linen hanging out all over the place. All right, so this is my next grouping of 3. So I just kind of take it and go around. And I find if I keep my finger there, it really helps lessen the knots. So that's why I have my finger there. So now I'm going to go through that loop there. Did I get both? No. My fingers are so sticky now because I've made a couple of these. And even though I washed my hands in between, I've been mucking around with Irish wax linen for a while. So they're a little sticky. So you can get a bit cuckoo trying to get this around. I'm going to start again on that one. So see, sometimes even me, when I'm making things, they don't go exactly like I want. Mostly it's because I'm trying to do this on camera. If I could do it in my hands the way that I would, which I wouldn't have it in this direction, but that's just the way I'm trying to do it for on camera. Okay, so I'm going to go around and then I'll come back through this way. So I want to keep it in between those 3. And I'm making this look much more difficult, but basically I'm just creating a knot there. There we go. So if you have one of my barrel knot tubes, you could just do a quick one loop kind of barrel knot thing. So I just want to make sure I'm on the other side of this one here, because I'm going to be doing where there's groups of 3 there. Okay, so again, take your pair of tweezers and pull that. So now you can see that's kind of creating like little nests of pearls, which looks kind of cute. So this is a really good summer kind of bracelet. You could also use a longer length of cording, and you could make this into a really cute anklet. So that would be kind of fun. So this one really went cuckoo, but there we go. I salvaged it. My mat's getting all pulled around. Oh, I'm a mess today. All right, so I'm going to go around. I'm going to keep showing you these ones because this is probably the harder part, is trying to get these organized. So go around where you want to put it, and then I go down, and that helps create a nice knot. And then just make sure it's on the other side of those 3 beads and not the next grouping. So there we go. And it doesn't have to be in any particular place other than on the other 3. And this will all make sense when I show it to you in its entirety. It is very cute. So that one is a perfect example of one where I needed to kind of pull up on it. So now I'm going to create a small one here. Let's see. I always find making these hard when I just do a small loop. So there we go. And just create that little knot part way down for some texture. And then we're going to go around these 3. And then just kind of get those out of the way. There you go. Just, of course, I know I'm making this look ridiculously hard. It is not hard. Let's get those together. So you can see it's just a loop. It's just a little loop there. All right, try that again. I'm not even going to edit that out because, you know, I want you to see that it will be a little messy because it's mostly because of the stickiness of it. But we want the sticky because the sticky is what holds this whole thing together. So, I mean, you could use Chinese knotting cord, I suppose. I probably wouldn't use Aslan for something like this. It might be a little too slippery. So, you know, you can always play around. I really did want to use leather, but you can't get 2 passes of leather unless you have like 0.5. And I don't carry that in my store, so I couldn't use the 0.5. All right, now we're just going to make our little texture knot. So this would be cute in leather. Although if you're using 0.5, yeah, it might break because you're doing a lot of knots. So, you know, it's one of those things. I never say you can't do something. Just give it a try. If you don't like it, you can always just tear it apart or waste a little bit of leather and try something else, right? That's what I do. That's how this came to be. I had a completely different idea and I didn't like it. So then I started playing around and then I thought I can do something different, completely different, and I kind of liked how it turned out. So that's how this came to be. All right, we're just doing our little texture knot. And from, let's see, how long am I? I'm right 32 minutes. So you can see that in actual time, this does not take a very long time to create. It's not a, you know, something that's going to take you all day to make. All right, create our little loop there. So I find going down is easier because then that's in the right direction. There we go. Hopefully this is working out okay because my mat's all over the place. I don't want it to be crooked on camera. And we're almost done there. So I'm just going to do my little texture knot. I'm going to make that a bigger loop. Go through there. And just kind of put that wherever. So it just creates a little extra knotting down the way. So it doesn't really serve a function other than just for looks. Now I did use 5 meters on this just to see how much we would have left over at the end. I made one with 4 meters and it was a little skimpy when it came to the knots on the end. So it's one of those things that you have to kind of play with. You might be able to get away with 4 meters or 4.5 meters or, you know, whatever. It's just, I always like to work with a little more than a little less. I find it much easier to have a little more to work with, especially when you're knotting. When you're knotting, you will find that if you're trying to scrimp with just a little tiny bit, it makes it just that much more difficult. All right, and then we're going to do our last one here. Now this is where you can sort of personalize it a little bit. So I never say that it's exactly the way, or you should be doing it exactly the way that I did it, because there is no real way that I did this, just kind of finished it off. But tie that tight. Okay, so now you can see we've got this little cluster of pearls and knots, which is just so cute. And it kind of almost looks like leather in this color. And on, it is really adorable. So now this one, I used 8 passes of, or 8 groupings of my pearls. And if I was making it for myself, I would use 9. I've got a larger wrist, so it just depends on the size of your wrist. So where you can make it a little bit longer and embellish it a little bit more is right here. So I've made that one final knot there, but I would make a knot right over top of that. And I want to make sure that I'm careful with this knot, that I'm only pulling through, like I'm actually pulling all of them through there. And this is where I probably would go in and pull each one to tighten it up. And that just takes a second. And that I always keep everything in my fingers so you can't see what I'm doing there. But I find if you're kind of pulling and tightening up with your other fingers here, you'll end up where you want. Oh, there, that pulled that one tight. There was just one that was kind of loose there, and I had to figure out which one it was. And I could see one more there. So, you know what, just like hold on to it. Oh, that's what that one was. There it goes. So I'm just creating a nice little knot over top. Now we're just going to be using this as our clasp. So I'm going to separate 4 and is that 4 and 4 and sort of figure out how big I would make my next knot. And I want it about that big. So I'm going to create another knot. So you'll see why it's so much easier to make knots if you have a little bit more than a little bit less. It just makes it really difficult. So I'm just going to do that. And kind of, I use my thumbnail a lot, and I sort of push against my thumbnail. And I just want to make sure before I tighten that up that I can get this on. If I can't, then I will make it a little bit bigger, but that's about perfect. Okay, so I'm going to tighten that up as best I can. Now you could take, I've got a few extra pearls over here. If you wanted to, we could take a couple of these here and run these through the end. Because we're not doing a kit, because like sometimes people will only need 6 passes of pearls, and other times people need 9 passes of pearls. So I thought, well, if you guys want to make this and you want to buy your own group of pearls or strand of pearls, you can then do whatever you want. So if you have some leftover pearls, you could embellish it like this on the end. So just take a knot like that, and I might even do a double knot just to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. You don't want to have your pearl kind of popping off the end. So that'll make a nice big beefy knot. And so you've got that pearl there. And then you could do another one a little bit longer. So I just think this would be so cute on. It's such a nice organic kind of look. So I'd probably want that one maybe a little longer. So I'll make that knot there. And pull that through and just kind of see where it's going to lay. Yeah, that'll be good there. And I'm just going to double that up so that it'll be nice and juicy, nice big knot. Now, I wouldn't use any glue on this. I would just make my knots nice and tight like that. So now we could just do, 2 like that, or I'm going to continue and do 4. So I'll just find 2 that kind of look like they go together. And my fingers are so sticky. All right, I think I'm going to put a knot right about there. And again, there's no rules on this, so just kind of have some fun with it. So I think this would be so cute as an anklet. Oh, I guess it would help if I put the bead on. Well, you know what? Then I'm just going to make sure that that's the way it's supposed to be then. We're going to do one without a pearl. So sometimes you just have to go with, maybe that's what I'll do, is 2 pearls and 2 knots. How about that? We're flying by the seat of our pants as I'm creating. Yeah, I think that'll be better than having a whole pile of pearls there. I'm going to just do some knots. So this knot can be over here. See, that's the way I meant it to be, right? Oh, goodness. On the other one I made, I didn't even embellish it at all. I just kind of cut it, and it was a bit boring. So by doing this, it's creating a little bit nicer look. I really actually kind of like this with the extras on the bottom. That one started to go where I didn't want it to go, so I'm going to make it go. So there we go. So we've just got a few pearls and some knots, and then you can just kind of trim these however you see fit, and probably having actual scissors would be better than having a pair of cutters, but I don't ever have the right tools for anything, do I? Okay, so let me just clean up for 2 seconds. I'll be right back. All right, so here's our finished piece. So now to put it on, you would just separate those 4 strands and then use that as your buttonhole, and it will get a little bit easier to put on. But look how cute that is. So much fun. So now we do have this 4-ply in many different colors. We have it in black and natural and purples and blues, and I think there's a beautiful rosy pink. We have yellow, orange, all kinds of stuff. So you can really go to town and make this your own. I will put a link to everything. I'll put a link to the Irish wax linen and to the button and to the pearls. So there you go. There's our fun little piece, and I am absolutely loving the organic feel of this one. So if you did enjoy this video, please make sure to give me a thumbs up. Leave me a comment, as I do love to hear from everybody. And please make sure to subscribe to my channel. I want to thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on the next one.